is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Season 3, Episode 10. Oh, Nathaniel, it's on! Or, oh, Nathaniel, it's on. In this episode, we finally get a little bit of addressing of the fact that Nathaniel was a shitty dude. Except it sort of seems like we're getting it addressed so that we can then move on and not have that be true anymore. Nevertheless, we'll see where it goes. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. Hi, Megan, if you're out there. This episode was a real roller coaster. There were parts of this that I loved. There were a couple of things that I was kind of like, I don't know about this, but this show can have a slow burn. And so I'm trying to withhold my commentary on some things. And it had at least one very good song. The Horny Angry Tango, is that how it's called? That was a good time. I found that very amusing. So the episode starts off with Rebecca taking hormones. Now, I had thought these would be in the form of a convenient pill that you just swallow when you need to swallow it. It turns out that it's injections. And honestly, I was a little bit bummed at the fact that she doesn't respect the fact that her friends don't want to watch her do this. Like, needles are an upsetting thing in the best of times. And injecting straight into your fucking gut, man, oh man, no thank you. But I was excited that this was already like rolling along by the time we started this episode, because this is what I sort of theorized was going to happen. And we find out that she isn't, consulting her therapist about this whole thing. She has decided that she's just going to tell everybody that he said it was fine and hope that they don't investigate that too much. And is telling herself that she's going to use some of the acronyms that she has learned in group therapy to move through this and not let it influence her behavior too much. I think this is actually a really smart idea on the part of the show. I didn't really think about it until this episode and when I saw what they were doing. So the thing about writing a show about a character who begins to get help for some of their mental issues, when you have had the whole show sort of revolve around that person's mental issues, is that you begin to run into a wall with, well, what do we have them do then if they're not going to be acting out in the bonkers way that they normally do? And having her decide to take hormones in the spirit of doing a good thing for a friend, I think is a really smart way of having that feed into the behavior that you need to make an entertaining show. And I think that they do a good thing here, both with what's going on with Daryl and with what's going on with Rebecca trying to get her job back. I had said last week, I really wasn't sure if Nathaniel was going to let her. I didn't think he'd be as much of an asshole about it as he is, but I'm glad that he was, because I wanted to see him be a bit of a dick again. But the thing about the Rebecca that we saw in like the first and second season is that she would do nice things for the wrong reasons. And it was like always there was a real reason. And then there was the line that she would give everybody. What I like about this season is that there's still a bit of a real reason underneath, but I believe that she genuinely means the other line that she's giving people as well. In the past, I didn't feel like she actually meant it at all. It just was what she thought people were going to buy. You know, the easiest, wrapping cheese around the pill so that it'll go down. This episode, you know, she's doing this thing for Daryl because she genuinely wants to help him, because she loves him and she's trying to be supportive of him. And the fact that she's not telling her therapist, it's like, no, that's not a good decision. But her heart is in the right place. And I feel like that is her really trying. And suing Nathaniel, of course, it's personal and it's about like getting back at him because she's pissed. But also, I really believe that she is realizing how unfair everything was and wants to help these people who have had a lot of their options taken away when he just like swooped in and decided to do whatever the fuck he felt like doing. And as much as I, of course, admit that Nathaniel's probably the more prevailing factor, I believe her when she's talking to the people in her group later and she's just like, I want to help these people and help herself, of course, as well. So yeah, I feel like this show has found a kind of a nice balance regarding having her be working on herself and attempting to address some of the behaviors and, you know, do better, while also having her not be perfect, making some of the same bad decisions. Maybe those decisions are mitigated in some ways, but it's not like they have no consequences at all. And I want to talk just briefly about the thing with Nathaniel and Raging Waters, because that is in the like previously on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. We see the scene where she suggests that he takes the day off and goes to Raging Waters. And I wondered why that specifically was something that got brought up. And then this episode is all about how he has this new girlfriend that he's with, who he took to Raging Waters, and how pissed she is that he did that. And it's one of those things that I don't buy quite as much because they were together a very short time. What was it, like a few weeks, maybe? So it's not exactly the same sort of situation. But there, even when you are over someone, or maybe over is the wrong word, even when you have realized that somebody is not right for you and you are moving on, when you see them doing something that you wanted to do with them, with someone else, there is nothing like that particular kind of anger. Brendan, as you all know, I have a tendency to date workaholics. And Brendan was a true workaholic. He was like the kind of 60-hour work week dude who does not even really realize that he's putting in 60-hour weeks and kind of underreports his hours to his boss type dude. And he was also one of those that did not send in his receipts and things in a timely fashion. So we would wind up broke because he hadn't filed for refunds from his job to reimburse him for expenses, for flights, for food, for gas. And thus we were constantly falling behind, and it was really, really frustrating. I wanted to take a trip. We got married. We put off having a honeymoon because we said we would do it later. And we never did. We never, ever took a honeymoon. By the time we finally scraped the time off, and I say by the time he finally agreed to take some days off for an actual vacation together, we had already started discussing divorce. So it was very much a last-ditch effort to do the bare minimum. And we used money to pay for the vacation from my father's life insurance. So it was a vacation that happened right after my father died, right after he and I had already started talking about divorce. And while we were away, my grandmother died. So it was kind of the worst trip I've ever taken, honestly. And I wanted to do so many things, and he just refused to take the time off and made me feel constantly like I was the second most important thing in his life. And it was kind of devastating. And then when we split up, I left Philly, and about a month after I left, he had started dating someone, and it was only 2 months into their relationship, and the two of them took a vacation in San Francisco together. And when I tell you guys, I was incandescent over this. I am not exaggerating. It took 7 years and my father's death to get him to move his fucking ass. And this dude then goes off for several days with a girl he hadn't even been with for 2 months. And a part of me wants to believe that was growth on his part, that he realized after we split up that he had fucked up. And that was him trying to do better, deciding to do better. But I don't have pure, grace in me. You know, I'm not able to just be like, I hope he's really growing. I am still angry about that. I think about it sometimes, and this is part of why Owen and I are doing this fundraiser, where we're doing Avatar: Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, and we're charging $1 an episode to fundraise so that we can have a honeymoon, because Owen could easily go down a similar road. He also works too much. He also has a hard time asking for time off. And yet he does make a huge effort to not do that sort of thing. And it is so important to me this time around to have a real honeymoon, because I know what happens when you say you're going to do it later. It just doesn't usually happen. Not never, but it's a difficult thing to take that time later on. And so this thing with Raging Waters, even though it's a much smaller scale thing, because they were not together that long, and she doesn't have specifically that sort of baggage around it with Nathaniel, I still really felt what she was feeling. There's just a sense of really? Really? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. You want to pop a little bit. Oh, and Lauren is in the chat and says, in Raging Waters was the place she was supposed to go with Josh Chan the first time Nathaniel is in the office, and he makes her work instead of going, and he called Josh a human flip-flop. That's right. I forgot about that. So, yeah, this is a thing that she keeps wanting to do. And honestly, it's kind of great that this is the thing. But I also really appreciate the acknowledgement at the end of the episode when she and Nathaniel get real with each other. And he says, all right, I did take her to Raging Waters just to get under your skin. We literally went in and took a selfie and then left because it's gross. And I was like, you know what, dude? I respect the fact that you admit that that's entirely what that was about. You know, it's not an easy thing to fully admit that you were just being petty. That's hard. And I like the fact that he was able to do that. So anyway, that's like the main thrust of what happens with them a little bit later, but we will get there. So the episode, I'm going to talk about Heather pretty much entirely for the first half of this. Heather is struggling still with her identity and what it means to not be a student anymore. Like, she doesn't really know who she could be if that isn't her identity. And it's an interesting thing because I never like identified as a student exactly. I always was sort of thinking in terms of what career path I was eventually going to take, and I wasn't satisfied with the being in school part. So the idea that she's like very attached to the concept of being in school, I find kind of interesting. And I'm sure that's a real thing, you know, and there's a lot that kind of goes along with being a student. You get like a lot of breaks on prices on things because you have like a student ID and you can put off paying back student loans. There's a lot of like small perks. And I say small because you are still like trying to do a full-time job and do your work. And you are usually pretty broke because you're not able to work like full-time hours. But she gradually, like, she's exploring more and more what it means for her that she doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. And she guests on Hector and his mom's podcast about their relationship. And when Hector asks, like, where they are and how serious they are with each other, she is not able to give a definitive answer because she doesn't really feel solid enough in her own life yet, which he takes very, like, respectfully. He seems to really understand that. As they're recording this, by the way, Josh is in the background eating chips. Guys, listen, Rashawn, I know you're listening to this. And I say this with all the love in the world. People don't understand how much microphones pick up. They don't believe me when I try to tell them. And they think that they can get away with doing shit. I had a host who tried to eat on the show while we were recording and really thought that was going to be fine. Really? Did you? I mean, come on. So Josh standing in the background and trying to eat chips out of one of the loudest bags in existence. Those cellophane bags you could hear on the moon. And the way that he tries to be like, oh, I'll just be quiet, but I just love listening to you guys. Then listen to the recording afterwards, fuckface. Get out. I was so glad that he finally just like turns around and leaves. And I did like the reminder that he's here because I completely had forgotten that he was living with them right now. So she goes to work and she gets approached by her boss, whose name I'm forgetting if anybody wants to remind me, who wants to know her ethnicity. That's what he wants to know. He is asking her ethnicity and her nationality. And Daryl. Is that Daryl? I thought Daryl was... No, not Rebecca's boss, Lauren. Sorry. No, Heather's boss. And because what it is that they have like a kind of diversity opening for management training at Home Base Corporate. And he wants to offer this to her, but he asks about her ethnicity in the most roundabout way. It is so painful and so hilarious and so completely on point. I loved this so much, you guys. And when he first approaches her, he says, "Can I ask you, what would you say if I were to ask what you are?" And she just goes, "What?" Guys, can I tell you how often I've been asked, "What are you?" And I know what people mean by it, and I know that they don't mean any harm, but that is such a dehumanizing thing to say to a person. What are you? And I will never forget one time I was talking to this dude that I worked with in the theater, and I know that he didn't mean this the way it sounded, but I explained to him that my mom was white and my father was from Colombia, and he said, "Oh yeah, those mixes are always the prettiest." Again, with just this very like dehumanizing language, like I'm not a person, I'm a mix. You know, just this like way of saying it that I was just like, word? Really? Is that how you wanna? Okay. And when recently we went to Tennessee for Owen's grandmother's funeral, his aunt introduced me to his family by saying, "This is Natasha, Owen's fiance. Isn't she exotic looking?" Just white people, just don't do it. Just stop, please. Just don't do it. I get it. You're bad at this. But struggle with that on your own time. Don't make me part of it. Figure it out. Christ. So I just really love later too that he thinks that he's going to apologize, as he puts it by saying sorry, and pulls a sorry out of a box. And she has to be like, first of all, I am not Indian. I do get that a lot, but I'm just half white, half black. Second of all, were I Indian, this is still a very bad idea. And yeah, dude, like getting somebody's ethnicity wrong in a case like this is really the second worst part of what you did. Oh God, it was so funny. And you know, I am not as dark skinned as Heather is, so I am certain that I get this much less than she does as a person. Like positive, but I do get it enough that I can imagine if you are more ambiguous, how tiring it must fucking be. Good God. So he talks to her about like doing this thing, this application, and signing up for the training program. And so she gets dressed up in like a suit and has her hair back in this like French twist. And it's really weird to see her. She says something about how like they don't allow body piercings, unnatural hair colors, or exposed skin, I think is one of them. And how basically that's her whole look. And she's very worried that this is all going to be too uptight for me. Oh, no tattoos. That's right. And it's Rebecca who says something about how usually your midriff is exposed. Like, we get it, you're skinny. And then says, oh God, I'm sorry, that was really rude. But like, honestly, I was thinking it too, Rebecca. It was rude. Don't say it. But there is a part of me that was like, oh God. Every time Heather rolled out in this adorable little outfit, it's pure envy. I remember the look that Heather rocks in this show is almost beat for beat the way that I dressed in high school and early days of college. Almost exactly. Hair color, piercings. I didn't have tattoos, but, you know, belly shirts and the whole thing. So there's just a bit of me that every time I see her, it just reminds me of like what it used to be like. And I just get very envious. So she goes to corporate, and it's very clear right away that this is much more uptight than she's prepared for. Guys, I think this is done really well. It would have been very easy to make this environment pure evil. And I hope that they do have some evil, because it's corporate and that's just unavoidable. That's how it works. But they went a different way with it and decided to have these people be extremely dull, but very encouraging and enthusiastic. In short, they seem a lot like Heather's parents. And that's a very good foil for her. You know, I think it's really interesting because part of what Heather's struggling with and part of what also Josh is struggling with was something that I also dealt with. And I've talked a lot about on the show, just not really knowing what to do and being good at things. Like I'm not unintelligent, but I never felt driven by the jobs that I was at for their sake. I would try really hard initially, make a great impression. I would get promoted quickly, and then I would start to just be resentful and pissed as I didn't continue to just shoot upward like a fucking rocket. And I think part of that is when you are somebody who was like anyone who was in a gifted and talented program knows what I'm talking about. When you were in school, you were getting constant reinforcement that you were doing well. You were getting constant encouragement, and like there were a lot of milestones to mark your improvement and your progress. And it felt like you were always getting this reinforcement and this external validation. So when you started in a new job, you have that initial like period of it's what's the word I want? When it's like that 3-month, I can't remember the word, but it's when they give you basically a trial period to see how you fit in. And it usually is like lines up with up until this point, you don't get benefits and things like that. And so you have this short-term goal to work towards when you start a new job where it's like, yeah, I just need to get through this preliminary period, prove that I'm good at the job, that I deserve to be on a schedule, that I deserve to be making what I'm making and maybe deserve to be making more and at a higher level, and that I deserve to be getting benefits and, full-time hours. And you get that. And depending on the job, most jobs, that's all you get for a long time. You continue after that period to work at around the same level for a good year, 3 years before you get to advance again, usually. And that's really hard when you're somebody who has been used to always being able to take another step forward. You feel like there's nothing to be done. And not only is there nothing to be done, but when there is something to be done, you're at the mercy of these other people because it's up to them to decide whether you've reached a point or not, because there are no hard and fast goals to reach exactly. You just have to like be reliable and do well and whatever. So it's I think that Heather being a student, I could see her struggling with that a little bit maybe in the future, and we'll see if that becomes a thing. The fact that because she initially is very concerned about this place being so uptight that she doesn't think she's going to be able to make it work. And gradually it becomes clear that this place desperately needs the ideas of somebody from the outside. Somebody who is not only not white, but also who I think probably worked on the ground floor in a way. This is something that is so true of so many corporate enterprises. They often have people in management who have not worked the floor of the businesses for years. And that is a major, major weak point for a lot of these places, in my opinion. If you don't work at the front lines against customers using the equipment and whatever, you have no idea what you're talking about when you try to make changes and suggest different things. you're talking out of your ass because you have no recent experience with anything that you're referencing. So I think in some ways that's also what she's bringing to the table. She has been a bartender and been right up at the front of the customer experience, watching people who are drunk about to get in their car with their kids, watching people who are wanting something sweet, leaving and going to an ice cream place. So she suggests having dessert tapas and having a rideshare program that like is in conjunction with home base. And they think these ideas are pure genius. They love them. The dude who is in charge of the trainee program, I don't know the actor's name. He is in a lot of comedic stuff. And he played a role on Brooklyn Nine-Nine of this like very sad man who's always going through some of the worst tragedies of his life. And every time you talk to him, it's like, you know, he has testicular cancer and his wife just left him for his brother and his car exploded on the highway and he got a ride with somebody and their car broke down too. Like that kind of thing. So when he showed up here, I was kind of like, oh no, are we going to get another sad sack? I just like immediately associated him with that character. And instead we get somebody who's like a sad sack but doesn't know it. Like he's just sort of, there's something really, he seems very satisfied with his life. He's giving off a real sense of like, no, this is totally what I want. And I'm super glad you're here, but I've also been very happy with how things are going. And I am looking forward to seeing more of his interplay with Heather specifically. I really hope, because this show lately especially has tended to jump between characters a little bit without giving us much follow-up later on. So we had a thing with Paula and her realizing that she isn't really present in her marriage, wanting to do better with that and promising to do so. And then we haven't really seen anything about what's going on with her in her life since. And when we go to like Valencia, all we have seen of her, we have like one conversation between her and Paula where the dirty laundry is aired a little bit regarding what Paula and Rebecca did. She isn't given a ton of space to like deal with that. And then we get her business as a wedding planner in which, for better or worse, she doesn't come off looking great because she really wants Rebecca to just not say anything to this dude who's being very obviously cheated on. And I understand her business, like why she would do that, but it also feels kind of gross in the moment. So I'm kind of hoping for more about the side characters because of the fact that Rebecca is struggling so much with trying to do better. I feel like they are some very rich veins of potential that they could mine there, you know? So what I'm saying is I would like to see a lot more of Heather's new job and what she's experiencing, because I just think that there is so much here to work with. And I hope that this doesn't get dropped for 6 episodes and then we, maybe eventually come back to it. So what this leads to is a conversation between her and Hector. And she tells him, I'm feeling a lot more solid now that I have a job that has like benefits and consistent hours and I'm getting paid pretty decently. What do you say about moving in with me? And she kind of quickly follows it up with, I know you're living with your mom and that you like living with her and it might be hard to leave. And he stops her just as Josh and his own mom come out. And they're wearing matching Metallica shirts and are going to a concert. And they're very excited and they leave. And Hector gives her a look and says, I've been watching Josh be best friends with my mom, and it's not a great look on him. And it turns out it's not a great look for me either. I'm ready to move out. And I was super happy about this development. It didn't really occur to me that he would feel this way. And I think it was well done having Josh be the one that he's realizing, like, oh God, no, buddy. I think, like, somebody that I read a review of an episode a while back where they claimed that the show was a little bit shamey about men who live at home with their parents. And I guess I could see it that way, but I feel like they really emphasize the kind of behavior more than the simple fact that they live with their parents. It's not necessarily an outright bad thing with a character immediately. It's more that they continue to, like, as other people's lives around them progress, those characters don't necessarily progress. And then they begin to realize. And I mean, I have not been in a situation. I lived with my mother for like 3 months after my divorce and moved out. I didn't live with her for a particularly long time. She was like, I think would have been willing for me to stay longer, actually. But I don't really see this as shaming on the show. I just see it as an exploration of the different reasons why people would do it. So for Josh, it's more of like, you know, he is an irresponsible person. He doesn't really know what to do with himself. He doesn't have much ambition, is a major factor for him. And I mean, his parents are so lovely and his life at home is so lovely that it just really seems, why would you want to leave? In a lot of ways, you know. With Heather, her identity as a student and kind of like this misanthropic attitude that she has, and the fact that her parents were perfectly willing to let her continue to live with them for who knows how much longer. It's a very different situation to Josh, where his mom clearly was like, it's time for you to fucking grow up. And Heather realized that she wasn't being pushed to grow up at all, and she was going to need to do that for herself. With Hector, he was living at home because he genuinely loved his mom's company, and they got along great. And that is a more rare thing, but I'm sure that happens, you know? So I don't know. I don't think it's shaming so much as just exploring like the different situations, you know, that people wind up in. And the fact that Hector is realizing how odd it is. I have mixed feelings on it. On the one hand, you never want somebody to like kind of drop something because they feel ashamed of it. It doesn't seem like he has changed towards his mom. He still loves her. But it does seem like he's realizing just, that doesn't seem super healthy, actually. Maybe that's not great. Which is probably smart. So, yeah, he says, yeah, definitely, I would like to move in. We see the two of them moving their stuff in while Rebecca and Daryl are talking. And we find out that the woman who was going to serve as the surrogate was already pregnant, they found out, when they went to implant her. And so they need to find a new surrogate. And Heather just like overhears this and immediately offers to do it herself in a very casual, offhand way. And I love that she has offered this right when Hector is moving in, doesn't say a word to him about it. And look, it's not his decision, but I do think he may have changed his answer about moving in had he known that she was about to be pregnant. And I wouldn't really have been too mad at him for that. That's a major thing, to go from living with your mom in a pretty, like, in a very different situation, to moving in with your girlfriend and her roommate, one of whom was taking hormones, the other one who is going to have very naturally occurring pregnancy hormones. Good luck, Hector. That's all I have to say to you. And I do like the fact that Heather is moving forward with things with Hector. I don't particularly care about them as a couple. Like, it's fine. It works out. But I'm not invested in any real way. I just sort of like this forward movement for both of them. You know, she hasn't really had anything serious other than Greg. And that was just such a mess. And Hector is one of those characters that feels like he has a lot of potential to be a pretty good partner. But also, I don't really know much about his personality beyond that he has 11 alarms set that he will sleep through, and that he lived with his mom. And so I don't really know if he knows how to do anything for himself. And that may be a bit of a sticking point between him and Heather, because Heather lived with her parents, but you don't get the impression necessarily that they were like doing her laundry and stuff for her. I could be wrong, because we only saw a brief glimpse and I don't fully remember how that was going. With Hector, I would hazard a guess that she was. So I'm looking forward to the developments on that front. So that's Heather. Now let us back up and talk about what's going on with Rebecca. She assumes that she's going to be able to saunter right back into this office and get her old job back. It doesn't seem to have even occurred to her that because she just dumped this dude, he's going to have some feelings about that. So she walks in very excited and is met with this cool, "What are you doing here?" And she tries to say, "My mother submitted my resignation while she was drugging me. That's not legal." And I was like, oh, you make a good point. It didn't really occur to me, but that's exactly true. However, she then follows it up with, "So I still work here." And I was like, okay, if you still work here though, you just haven't been showing up. And that is something that could easily be used against you. You know that, right? And sure enough, his immediate response is, "Oh, you still work here? Well, then you're fired." And granted, you know, she is dealing with some actual medical issues. So not coming in, I'm sure she would have been excused had she decided to handle things that way from the outset. If she had already told Nathaniel weeks ago, "I'm planning on coming back. My mom resigned for me, but please don't take that seriously. I'm just not ready yet. And I am hoping for around this date to return." Then I think he wouldn't have been able to just fire her the way that he does. But because she made no provisions at all and seemed to take it for granted that she could just swan in and be fine, that I think sets him off just as much as anything. So he fires her and she leaves in a bit of like a hormonal funk and goes into the break room where everybody is sitting, and she says something about how Nathaniel can be a monster. And everybody starts talking about what a nice guy he's been recently. It made me very happy, because you guys know what I've been saying. He is presented as such a douchebag. And then all of a sudden he's Mr. Sweet Pants. And I was just like, I don't get it. Now the thing is, it does feel like the show is acknowledging it, so as to be able to be like, well, see, we acknowledged it, and then go right on with him being a nice guy again. And we'll see. But it's the song she like reminds everybody of the fact that he came in here and was just about to like fire all of you. He stole the company from you, Daryl. Like, you remember that, right? And makes some very solid points. And they start to be like, well, okay, yeah, actually, I see your point. And then she says something about how obviously he's still devastated about being dumped. And this is when Daryl says, I don't know if he's that devastated. He's got a new girlfriend. And she immediately is like, excuse me, what? Because it has not been that long. And she grabs one of their phones, I think Tim, and checks up on this girl who is very cute. And there is a selfie of them on Instagram at Raging Waters. And this basically sets her off completely. She is so angry, and I love this so much. And this is when she starts the song. Again with the thing about referencing him being in the show without, and like trying to cover for it. He's a bad guy even when he's nice. Just because you've seen him show an ounce of vulnerability, do you think that means he has some secret heart of gold? Sure, there was that one scene where he pooped his pants in front of you. And by scene, I mean he made a scene. He's the new guy, not easily reformed by some quirky girl that he met at work. Just because now he became a season regular, and by season regular, I mean he eats bran in the spring, doesn't mean the show is now called Rich and Pompous Lawyer, and by show, I mean his favorite show, which, by the way, is Wings. I did that, and that's how I know he hasn't changed a bit. He's an evil sociopath who tricked you into liking him. Why else do you think I'm singing this reprise? And by singing this reprise, I mean whatever, just don't think about it. And when she says whatever, just don't think about it, she looks directly at the camera. And I found this kind of charming. So everybody sort of like gets on board. They're very half-hearted about it, really. And they have a meeting, at home base where she presents them with her ideas about how to handle this. And Tim asks her, really, you could get a job literally anywhere. You went to Harvard. Why wouldn't you just go anywhere else and also take us with you? Oh my God, Maya. She's like, I'd like to work at a firm where I could be outside all day, like Google or SpaceX. What's SpaceX? Guys, don't tell me. I don't want to know what SpaceX is. So Rebecca says, guys, this is not about having a job or getting health insurance or being happier or being in fresh air. This is about justice for all of us. It's about good versus evil. You guys know that. Head back in the game. So what she wants to do is approach Daryl's ex-wife, Stacy, and convince her to declare that the original sale was invalid because she was being manipulated, and thus they will revert to her and they will buy the shares of the company from her once she has them back. And she goes over to Stacy's house. This woman is played by somebody who looks so familiar to me. And I can't put my finger on what I know her from. She almost reminds me of somebody that I've maybe seen in like The Magicians or something. I can't decide. I think she's delightful. I kind of wish that she was on the show more. She's wearing this like aqua bikini with gold chains for the halter, and she has like gold hoop earrings on. It's just really a look, and I am into it. I really, really enjoy her. And I like that she points out to Rebecca how weird it is for her to have shown up here when she's also like making a baby with her ex-husband. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. And Rebecca in this hot tub, she is talking about how she's super horny because the hormones are just playing merry havoc. So she's got this thing that recurs throughout this episode where she keeps getting turned on because of her fights with Nathaniel. And at one point, she decides to borrow Heather's vibrator. And I am so glad that I never had a female roommate. Guys, there are just some things that I think we should all agree are out of bounds. I feel like that's just not acceptable. I do not accept it. I do love, though, how she says, I'm going into my room for 8 to 10 minutes. Please don't disturb me. She has a very specific time frame that she's setting aside. I just find that really, I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of those that once you pop, you can't stop. So 8 to 10 minutes is not going to do it for me. If I start, I'm going to need to set aside a good hour because that's just how it works. So this scene, she finally agrees if Rebecca will help her sue her neighbor's baby, she will sell the shares back, which is amazing. And I really want to know if this is something that can be done, guys, because I don't think it is. I think it's just for comedic value, but our laws are so insane that sometimes there are things that I'm just sort of yeah, you know what? I bet that's real. I bet that is a thing that we absolutely do or allow in this country. I'm looking her up real quick to see what I know her from. So she was on The Sopranos. The actress's name is Allison Dunbar. Maybe it's The Sopranos that I know her from. But anyway, I just wanted to check because she just looks so familiar to me and it was kind of killing me. So then we have the scene where Nathaniel shows up at the apartment and flips out on Rebecca because she's suing him. And the two of them try to behave as if they are not doing this for personal reasons, even though it's so clear to both of them and everyone else that is exactly what it is. And I love when he says, you're trying to get back at me for not rehiring you and for the Raging Waters thing. And I love, she had never mentioned that. So the fact that he brings it up, she takes that as proof that he did that shit on purpose. And there's a bit of a smile on his face when she says that really he knows he's been caught, you know? It's a pretty good fight, honestly, because there is some humor in it. There's still some warmth, even though they are clearly so angry at each other. And oh my God. And she says something about how she's trying to make healthier choices earlier. And he says, oh, okay, tell that to your personal pan pizza. And then in this scene, when he says oh, I have a new girl who's smart and funny and not crazy. And there are some real low blows here. And I wish that she had come at him with some low blows as well. But nevertheless. So he stalks out of there. She goes and borrows Heather's vibrator. And then we go to the court scene. And she's wearing this zip front dress that for me does not feel like it really suits, but it's fine. And I love the two of them getting in each other's faces with their lawyer speak and the judge interrupting and saying, can you guys look at me? I can barely hear what you're saying. It's really funny, guys. And then we go into the horny, angry tango, which I gotta say, Rebecca Bunch in this tango dress. All right, girl, get it. Shit. She looks amazing. It's slit up to her belly button practically. And she does a couple of leg lifts that I was like, well, somebody's been working on their flexibility. It's pretty good. I've never done a tango. It's one of those things that I feel like it doesn't look that difficult exactly. It's just the kind of thing that making it look good would be the challenge. But yeah, I love this whole thing. It's we cut between them doing this dance and the arguments that they're making. And at one point they actually pull away from each other in the courtroom as if they were dancing in the courtroom. And when we cut to them dancing, we have the judge who is the one playing the accordion. It's very good. I enjoyed this a great deal. And in the end, the judge rules in Rebecca's favor because, of course she does, because Nathaniel was being a shitty dude. When he walks out, the way that he looks at everybody who is like, there are his subordinates and they are cheering at the fact that he just lost. That has to sting a little bit, especially since he has felt like he's a little close to these people, I think, since Rebecca's been gone. And then they immediately kind of side with Rebecca when she shows back up again. You know? And this is one of those things where I'm like, I appreciate these people because they're doing this for themselves as well. But there are some times where I'm like, man, Rebecca is really good at manipulating people because they all like, she is though. She is. I can't really mitigate that one. She just is. So she goes to sell the Garfinkel ring for the money to buy the shares for the firm. And the jeweler says it's not real. And she says, but I sold this to a pawn shop. And he says, oh yeah, that place went out of business because the dude was bad at telling what was real jewelry and he was buying fakes. So they're out of business now. And I am dying to know what the deal is with the Garfinkel ring. Did she get given a copy? Does her mother have the real one? Did her mother know it was fake? What, like, I feel like her mother can't have known it was fake because she was the one who told Josh to go and buy it back and propose to Rebecca with it. And if she knew Rebecca had pawned it, she wouldn't, I feel like she would have felt like the game had been given away. I don't know. But regardless, Rebecca does not have the money. So Paula says something about how, like, yeah, but you have lots of, like, rich family and friends. Can't you, like, go to some networking thing where you get the money from somebody? And eventually she goes through a list of very weird people. One of the people is Audra Levine's husband, who has the small penis. One of whom is BJ Novak, who is regretting the fact that nobody seems to want ecstasy anymore. The other one is Dr. Phil, who she seemed to like somehow get his number, and I don't know how. It's a series of very weird little interviews. And finally she comes to like the end of her rope and feeling like she's not going to be able to manage this. So we have a scene in which I do feel like Rebecca shows a lack of growth, unfortunately. Heather comes home and she talks to Rebecca about what she's going through. And Rebecca basically does not listen to a word she says and then asks if she can borrow money. And Heather reminds her that Rebecca pays her part of the rent. And I'm just like, how is this any different than living with your parents then? I thought the point was that she got money from being Miss Douche. And that was like her nest egg to get out of the house. And then that she began to work at home base because that was how she was going to continue to pay the rent. And I don't know what she's doing then. What? How? So Rebecca goes to, well, oh my God, I forgot about this montage. She's very, very hormonal and she's feeling a way about Nathaniel's new girlfriend. And he had texted her with a photo, the photo at Raging Waters. I hear you can't afford the shares. You must be raging right now. And she gets really mad. And she starts to go on the dark web in a bit of a like frenzy of hormones. And it's kind of fun. They do like that hackers thing along with it. And it's like, it seems as if maybe she commissioned a hit on Mona, the girl that he's seeing. From Dork Wizard 86, her username is Pretzel365. And the next day she realizes that shit has gone too far, and she's in group therapy, and she's talking to all of them privately before the doctor gets there about what to do, with, by the way, a giant hormone zit on her chin, which is a really, really nice touch. I appreciated that so much. I also want to talk about the people that are in her group therapy sessions. We've got the like paranoid chemtrails guy who eventually winds up offering to loan her the money. He says give her the money. I can't tell if that's what it really is or what, but I am highly suspicious of somebody with the kind of paranoia he has offering to give money away. And I feel like this was a bad idea, but also she was kind of up against the wall. And then there's this woman who's like dressed all in purple, who's like, seems like a little bit of a goody two shoes type. We have the buzz cut, like trucker seeming dude who doesn't really say all too much. I don't have a good read on him yet. And then we have like Heather, but much less happy, like teenage girl who is wearing 2 pleated plaid miniskirts, one on top of the other. And I found that so confusing. I am very interested in learning more about these people. At first I was kind of like, I don't know about this. And now I'm like, yeah, I'd like to get into this a little bit more. So the episode ends with her getting that money, buying the shares, and then taking over the other half of Nathaniel's office so that they have desks facing one another because they are now equals in the firm. And eventually she winds up apologizing to him for how she's been acting. Now that the hormones are gone, she's beginning to realize how she was behaving and feels a little bit bad about it. And when she apologizes, he does as well. And she comes over to shake his hand, to which I was like, you guys are definitely going to fuck. And then that is exactly what happens. And I was like, no. But this is the thing. When you dump a person and you work together, breaking up properly is a lot harder when you work together. It just is. It's just not to say that it won't take the first time. Like sometimes for some people, being around each other all day is just confirming the fact that you shouldn't be together. But I have dated people I worked with and it was really hard. I didn't wind up splitting the first time, you know? So, we'll see how, and also he's like got a new girlfriend now. I don't know if they're girlfriend, boyfriend. It might not be like that they're monogamous yet, but I feel like that's a bad thing probably. So yeah, she's in that position and Heather has taken the position of being like the regional manager of home base. And, it's just, everybody's doing pretty well by the end of this episode. So I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah, guys, thank you all again so much for hanging out with me. And thank you again to Megan for commissioning this episode. I hope you guys have been enjoying the coverage. I feel weirdly like I missed something that I wanted to talk about this episode, but I can't remember what it even is. So anyway, I will remember as soon as we finish, and it will annoy me for the rest of the week. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.